I kind of jokingly said to the driver, "You're not the shooter, are you?" He gave me some sort of a no response, like he shook his head or he said no.
But guess what? That Uber customer was actually one of the lucky ones.
Turns out he was in the car with the man now accused of going on that weekend shooting rampage in Kalamazoo.
We have somebody just driving around, finding people and shooting them dead in their tracks.
When the shooting stopped, there were 8 victims in all, and 6 of them died. This morning, we're learning more about the victims and the gunman. Thanks for joining us on this Monday morning, and we certainly begin on a somber note. Our hearts and prayers are certainly with those families impacted in Kalamazoo. Those victims were simply going about their daily lives this weekend, grabbing a bite to eat, shopping for a car.
And the one question that everybody still asking is why, because this was so random. And the randomness of that attack makes it that much more frightening and hard to understand. And as we do say good morning, everybody, I'm Jason Colder in for Everard this morning.
And we'll get you updated on weather and traffic this morning in just a moment. But first, we do want to get you updated with the very latest in case you're just waking up on what's happening in Kalamazoo. Hundreds packed a Kalamazoo church last night as the community begins this long process of healing.
And that question, we've been talking about it all morning. Why? Still looking for what could have caused all of this to even start in the first place.
Local 4's Nick Monticelli traveled to Kalamazoo over the weekend, and he's there for us this morning. Nick, perhaps we're going to learn more when the accused gunman goes to court today.
You'll certainly learn more details about what exactly happened at what times, and sometimes you hear something about mental health or mental competency. If that becomes a factor in this trial at all, we certainly will find out. But one thing that you mentioned at the beginning of this show certainly is something everyone needs to kind of just take a note on and listen to. We're live right now at the Cracker Barrel here at 94 and 131. This is where 4 women were killed. Most of the shootings happened right here, but this shooting spree was all over the city, about 10 miles in either direction. And at one point, many people were locked down because there was somebody running around the city, driving around the city, shooting at random.
You know, this hits not just your community, but your friend. And it puts an entirely new light on everything.
Those in this community, while baffled, are proud of the way they are coming together. But for those closest to the victims, like Maya Hokie, a friend of Tyler Smith's, there are no words that can console.
He was one of the happiest people you could ever meet. No one ever saw him without a smile on his face.
The shootings were Saturday, the first around 6 p.m. A woman was shot several times at an apartment complex.
So I look out here, and there's a woman laying on the ground.
A little over 4 hours later, at 10:08 p.m., the next shooting, this time at a car dealership closer to downtown. A father, Richard Smith, and his 18-year-old son, Tyler, were killed. Then, just 18 minutes later at 10:24, the worst shooting here at Cracker Barrel near US 131 and I-94. 4 women were killed. 60-year-old Mary Jo Nye, 62-year-old Mary Lou Nye, 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne, and 74-year-old Dorothy Brown. A 14-year-old girl was also shot. She is not expected to survive. And although these were random killings, the prosecutor says after looking at surveillance video, they were cold and intentional.
This guy was not on anybody's radar for any reason. He didn't have a lengthy criminal history. He wasn't a known troublemaker. And yet, here he is having shot 8 people and killed 6.
So back out here live, as far as the suspect goes, he is scheduled to be arraigned this afternoon as long as all of the police reports come in on time this morning. And I was asked by several people here in the Kalamazoo community to pass along this message. They wanted folks to know how much they're leaning on their faith today and in the weeks and months and years ahead, and how they really banded together. You saw a lot of that in that video from the vigil. In fact, it was kind of strange. All of them at one point were praying for the suspect. We're live in Kalamazoo. Nick Monticelli, Local 4 News today.
And Nick, let's talk a little bit more about the suspect. A lot of people obviously are wondering what possibly could motivate someone to do something like this. Authorities have ruled out some things. They don't believe it's connected to terrorism?
No, they do not. And one of the reasons they believe that is because they looked into his history. They looked into everything. They said there was nothing, no red flags, no reason that anybody should have been watching him. And they also, of course, did those back channel searches looking for ties to extremism and things like that. They didn't see any of that. So it almost makes it worse in a sense because it still is more random and there's no connection to any kind of motive at all.
Yeah, and that's the big question I think everybody's asking this morning. Nick Monticelli reporting live from Kalamazoo. And
8 people shot and 6 of them dead this morning. An entire community in shock. We begin this half hour with an update on the shooting rampage in Kalamazoo. The accused gunman, an Uber driver, is heading to court today. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. This is the man that everyone wants to hear from, an Uber driver who appeared to just start randomly picking his victims.
And here's a look at the lives lost. 4 women shot and killed outside a Cracker Barrel restaurant. And the other 2 victims, a father and son who were out shopping for a car. Local 4's Nick Monticelli is live in Kalamazoo this morning. And Nick, we're also hearing from 2 other men now who say they could have been targeted as well.
Well, and that's what everyone was afraid of, Jason and Rhonda. This shooting rampage lasted 6 hours here throughout the city of Kalamazoo, and some of the cities outlying the actual city. And there was so much fear in Kalamazoo. People were locked inside of bars, and there were also some who didn't realize what was going on, so much so that one gentleman ended up in Dalton's Uber car after all the shootings and before he was arrested.
One of the happiest people you could ever meet. No one ever saw him without a smile on his face.
For many like Maya Hokie, there are still no words that can offer any support. She was close to Tyler Smith, who was killed along with his dad at the car dealership. But it has already been said that thanks to police, there would have been more victims. The shootings were Saturday, the first around 6 p.m. A woman was shot several times at an apartment complex. A little over 4 hours later, at 10:08 p.m., the next shooting, this time at a car dealership closer to downtown. Then, just 18 minutes later, at 10:24, the worst shooting here at Cracker Barrel near US 131 and I-94. 4 women were killed. The timing down to the minutes of all of this means a lot to a lot of people, like Dylan Thompson and Carmen Morin, who ordered an Uber ride and were assigned to Dalton. They canceled it, not knowing what was going on.
And just thinking, what would have happened had we gotten to our vehicle. He would have brought us back here where nobody else, none of our neighbors were outside. Anything could have happened once we stepped out of his vehicle and got up into our front yard. Anything could have happened at that point.
Even scarier, a man named Derek in the car with Dalton minutes before his arrest.
And I kind of jokingly said to the driver, "You're not the shooter, are you?" And he gave me some sort of a no response, like he shook his head or he said no.
Derek then went on to say that the conversation with Dalton was completely normal and he did not suspect anything was out of the ordinary, that is, until he got to his hotel room that night and then woke up in the morning and saw Dalton's photo on the news. As for the suspect, Jason Dalton, he is scheduled to be in court for his arraignment this afternoon. We're live in Kalamazoo. Nick Monticelli, Local 4 News Today.
And Nick, I don't know if any of the victims or the people that actually got rides have said, did they ever feel in danger when they were getting a ride from him?
Yeah, in fact, there was one gentleman who talked to many of the media outlets here in Kalamazoo who actually said that Saturday, when all this was going on, but prior to the shooting, he said that Dalton was driving so erratically that he begged him to slow down, called 911, and actually jumped out of the car.
Wow. And it's just lucky more, as Nick said earlier, lucky more lives weren't lost in this.
Absolutely, but such a tragedy, and our hearts certainly go out to all the families of the victims. Nick, thank you.